Hello, everyone. My name is Madison Austin, and I teach at Conway Springs High School. Case study presentation. I chose Punishing Choices from the Harvard University Case Study Options. The reason I chose this study is because I am passionate about making sure my students are both safe at school and at home. Naturally, I'm very protective of my students and athletes, so I felt this case study would be a great fit for me. A brief summary of the case study starts with Mrs. Harrison is giving a conversation with Jamal, who is her third grade student, with his mom and how he has been acting differently lately about the large bruise on his arm and the cut under his eye. Jamal's mom assured the teacher that everything is going well at home and immediately became offended and threatened to take Jamal out of Alton Elementary School if these conversations about his bruises on Jamal kept coming up. The mom also mentioned that her and her new boyfriend disciplined Jamal like every other parent do, meaning corporal punishment for discipline. Mrs. Harrison had spent lots of time looking over the laws of governing mandated reporting and quickly noticed that there's a big controversy surrounding the line between corporal punishment and child abuse. The Department of Child Services, or DCS, for the state of Tennessee possess that physical abuse is non-accidental trauma or physical injury of a child or failure to protect a child from harm. Her fellow TFA Corps member, Colin, walks into her room and asks how the conversation between her and Jamal's mother went. They then talk about whether Mrs. Harrison should report the incidents she is seeing. Colin warns her and sees on his previous experience on mandated reporting and the DCS, which didn't end very well. The student went into foster care and was separated from his sister and then traveled between different locations for 9 months. Colin suggests waiting until Mrs. Harrison knows that Jamal is truly in danger before calling DCS. Mrs. Harrison is torn on what to do next because she believed in maintaining the family unit was crucial. However, was still concerned with Jamal's safety and well-being. The following consequences of Mrs. Harrison reports or does not report to DCS is the loss of relationships with the family and student. The student goes to a different school in the future. Stress on the student from family separation. The student could go into foster care and have further stress or abuse. She could wrongfully accuse the family. And if she does not report to DCS, further abuse could be going to Jamal, or possibly, in a worst-case scenario, death, or she could result in a Class B misdemeanor in Kansas, which is either a fine of $1,000 or 6 months in jail. Ethically, though, Mrs. Harrison is in a tough situation as she will have consequences for either reporting or not reporting Jamal. These are things she will need to weigh when making her final decision. This is a big reason why there is a thin line between child abuse and corporal punishment and why it's ethically challenging for us teachers. On the Kansas Department for Children and Families website, there is a list of who is considered a mandated reporter for children. I attached a link to the full list, but wanted to focus for the presentation on the people who would typically be located within a school, which would be teachers, school administrators, licensed social workers, licensed professional counselors, employees of educational institution which the child is attending, so that could possibly be a para, law enforcement officers, or case managers. On the Guide to Reporting Child Abuse and Neglect from Kansas Department for Children and Families, on page 5, the guide gives common physical and behavioral examples of abuse. It then says to please note that these behavior indicators must be considered with other evidence. The guide suggests to ask yourself these 3 questions to determine if physical abuse has occurred. Is the explanation consistent with physical evidence? Are there any other physical or behavioral indicators? Are there family environmental stresses that are apparent? So with Jamal's case, I would say yes, as is inconsistent with medical history with his bruises and cuts and his behavior. For the question number 2, I'd also say yes. Physically, he has bruises and cuts, and behaviorally, he has been seeing a sullen personality change and has become volatile. And for question number 3, I would also say yes because there is a new boyfriend living in the home. So my overall conclusion is to, yes, report Jamal's situation to the DCS for Tennessee or DCF for Kansas, because the situation meets all 3 criteria in the previous slide. I would feel comfortable doing this because as a teacher, I would only need to ask minimum amount of questions to get the information to answer the criteria questions from the previous slide, not need to know all the facts of the situation to make a report, and I only need to have a suspicion to file a report and can file anonymously. The investigator will take matters into their own hands and define what the next best option is for Jamal. It is not my responsibility as the teacher. Overall, I'd rather report it to be safe than sorry, especially since I can report it anonymously. I wouldn't want to be in trouble with the law and possibly have my teaching license revoked and have a Class B misdemeanor on my file. And last but not least are my references. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to seeing everybody else's. Have a great weekend.